The restaurant went silent the moment the plate hit the floor. Food splattered across a custom suit that cost more than the waitress's entire yearly income. The girl froze. Her hands trembled as she stared at the stains spreading across the chest of the most feared man in the city. I'm sorry, she whispered. No one breathed, everyone knew who he was. The mafia boss slowly looked down at his ruined suit, then up at the poor girl standing in front of him, face pale, eyes filled with terror. The manager rushed forward. The guards reached inside their jackets. Someone in the back actually stood up, ready to run. The girl waited for screaming, for violence, for her life to end in front of everyone. Instead, the boss did something no one expected. Backhand index pointing right, stay till the end, because what he did next didn't just save her life. It exposed a truth that shocked the entire room. The dinner rush at Rivero's was always brutal. The kind of brutal that left your feet aching, your shoulders stiff, and your mind running 2 steps ahead just to keep up. Plates flew out of the kitchen in rapid succession. Orders were shouted, glasses clinked. Money talked softly in this place, but it talked constantly. Lena Brooks tightened her grip on the tray as she pushed through the narrow aisle between tables. 3 entrees, 2 wine glasses, 1 chance not to mess up. She'd been on shift since noon. A double, again, because rent didn't care that she was tired, and her landlord definitely didn't care that her mom's medical bills were piling up faster than she could count. Table 12 needs refills, the manager barked from across the room. I've got it, Lena called back, even though she absolutely didn't. Her sneakers slipped slightly on the polished floor, but she recovered. Barely, just get through the night, she told herself. Then you can go home. She didn't look at the VIP section, she never did. Everyone who worked at Rivero's knew the rule: don't look, don't linger, don't ask. The men in that section didn't come for food, they came for privacy, and fear handled the rest. But tonight the air felt heavier. The room had gone quieter around one table in particular. Conversations lowered without anyone realizing they were doing it. Servers rerouted themselves instinctively. Lena noticed too late. She turned to avoid a chair that had been pushed out farther than usual, her foot catching on the edge of the rug. The tray tilted, time slowed in the worst possible way. She felt the weight shift, heard the clatter of silverware, saw the plate slide. No, she breathed. The food hit the floor, and then worse, it splashed. Sauce, oil, garnish, right onto the dark suit of the man seated at the center of the VIP table. The sound wasn't loud. But the silence that followed was, every fork stopped midair, every voice died, every head turned. Lena's blood drained from her face. The man didn't move at first. He simply looked down at his chest, at the slow-spreading stain across fabric so fine it probably cost more than Lena made in 6 months. Someone gasped. The manager appeared instantly, his face pale. "Sir, I am so—" The man raised a single finger. The manager stopped breathing. Lena couldn't. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." The man lifted his eyes. They were dark, calm, unreadable. This was Dominic Hale. Lena didn't know his name, but she knew his presence. Everyone did. He didn't shout, he didn't threat, he didn't even frown. He studied her the way someone might study a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Around them, his guards shifted subtly. Jackets adjusted. Hands hovered too close to places Lena didn't want to think about. The manager's voice trembled. "Please, sir, we'll take care of this. She'll be dealt with." "Stop," Dominic said quietly. The word cut through the room sharper than a scream ever could. He looked at Lena again. "How long have you been on shift?" he asked. The question stunned her. What? How long," he repeated calmly, "have you been working tonight?" Lena swallowed hard. Since noon." Dominic glanced at the clock on the wall, nearly 10. "Have you eaten?" he asked. The manager's mouth fell open. Lena shook her head automatically. "No, sir." Dominic nodded once as if that answered something important. He stood. Chairs scraped as his men rose with him, but he gestured them down without looking. Dominic stepped closer to Lena. She flinched despite herself. He noticed. "You didn't do this on purpose," he said. It wasn't a question. No, she said quickly. I swear I'm careful, I just. Relax, he said softly. The word carried weight. Dominic turned to the manager. Bring her a napkin and a chair. The manager blinked. A chair for her, Dominic said. Lena stared as a chair was pulled out for her at the edge of the table. I shouldn't, she started. You're shaking, Dominic said, not unkindly. Sit. Her legs gave in before her pride could protest. She sat. The entire restaurant watched in disbelief. Dominic removed his jacket slowly and handed it to one of his guards. Get me another, he said. Then he turned back to Lena. What's your name? He asked. Lena, he repeated, committing it to memory. Do you always apologize this much when something goes wrong? Her throat tightened. Only when I'm scared. A faint smile touched his lips. Gone as quickly as it appeared. Fair, he said. He glanced down at the mess on the floor. No one got hurt, Dominic continued. That's what matters. The manager cleared his throat nervously. Sir, we can fire her immediately. No, Dominic said. The room froze again. No. The manager echoed. Dominic's gaze hardened slightly. I don't punish people for accidents. He looked back at Lena. Finish your shift. Her eyes widened. Yes, sir. And Lena, he added. She looked up. Next time, he said calmly, if you're that tired, ask for help. He turned away, conversation over. The restaurant slowly exhaled. Whispers erupted. Eyes followed Lena as she stood on unsteady legs and backed away. She expected relief. What she felt instead was confusion and fear, because as she returned to the kitchen, heart racing, she couldn't shake one thought. The man everyone feared hadn't yelled, hadn't punished her, hadn't even seemed angry. He had noticed her, and somehow that felt far more dangerous than the spill ever could have been. Lena didn't breathe properly again until she reached the kitchen. The swinging door shut behind her with a dull thud, and suddenly the noise came rushing back, pans clattering, cooks shouting orders, the hiss of grills, and the constant pressure of too many plates and too few hands. Her fingers were still shaking. You okay? Whispered Mara, another waitress, grabbing Lena's arm. Lena nodded automatically, though she felt anything but okay. Yeah, I think so. Mara leaned in, eyes wide. Do you know who that was? Lena swallowed. I have an idea. Everyone did. Even if you didn't know his name, you knew the way the room bent around him, the way people instinctively made space, the way authority seemed to cling to him like a second skin. You're lucky, Mara said under her breath. I've seen people fired for less, way less. Lena nodded again, though luck wasn't the word she would have chosen. As she grabbed another tray, her mind replayed the moment over and over. How he hadn't shouted, how he'd asked questions no one else ever did, how he'd looked at her like she was more than a problem to be removed. That scared her more than anger would have. For the rest of the shift, Lena avoided the VIP section completely. She focused on smaller tables, refills, clearing plates, anything to keep her hands busy and her thoughts elsewhere. But she could feel his presence even when she wasn't looking. At one point, she caught her manager watching her closely, not with anger but with calculation, like he was trying to figure out whether she was a liability or something else entirely. When the kitchen finally called last orders, Lena nearly cried with relief. She finished wiping down a table when a shadow fell across the floor. Lena, her stomach dropped, she turned slowly. It was one of Dominic Hale's men, tall, clean-cut, expression neutral. Yes, she said, forcing calm into her voice. Mr. Hale would like a word, the man said. The world narrowed to a single, awful point. I'm still working, Lena said quickly. I mean, I can finish. He's aware, the man replied. It'll only take a minute. Mara shot her a look that said I'm so sorry as Lena followed him back toward the VIP area. Dominic was standing now, jacket replaced, stain gone as if it had never happened. He looked like the kind of man who didn't carry messes with him for long. Lena, he said when he saw her, thank you for coming. She stopped a few feet away. Yes, sir. You live nearby? He asked. The question threw her off balance. About 20 minutes away by bus. Dominic nodded. You're working doubles, why? Lena hesitated. She didn't want to say it, didn't want pity or worse interest. My mom's sick, she said finally. I help with bills. Dominic's gaze sharpened, not unkindly, focused. What kind of sick? Lena shifted her weight. Kidneys, she's on dialysis. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Who's watching her now? He asked. My neighbor checks in, Lena replied. She's fine tonight. Dominic studied her face, then reached into his pocket and placed a folded bill on the table. For the jacket, he said. Lena's eyes widened. No, sir, I can't. That wasn't a request, Dominic said calmly. She hesitated, then took it with trembling fingers. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded once. You can go. She turned to leave, heart pounding. Lena, he added. She looked back. You handled that well, he said. Not everyone would. That was all. Outside, the city air felt cold against her overheated skin. Lena waited at the bus stop, replaying everything, the folded bill heavy in her pocket. When she unfolded it, her breath caught. It was far more than a jacket cleaning would cost. Her first instinct was panic. Her second was guilt. Her third was gratitude she didn't know how to process. When she got home, her mother was asleep on the couch, TV murmuring softly. Lena draped a blanket over her and sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the money. It doesn't mean anything, she told herself. It was just a tip, but deep down she knew better. Men like Dominic Hale didn't do just anything. Over the next week, Lena noticed changes. Her schedule shifted subtly, better sections, fewer doubles. The manager stopped snapping at her. Even the cooks treated her with a strange, careful respect. And Dominic Hale kept coming back, always alone, always calm. Sometimes he nodded at her, sometimes he didn't. Once he asked how her mother was doing. The question lingered with her long after he left. She told herself not to read into it. She told herself she was imagining things. Until the night she overheard two men at the bar whispering. That's her, one murmured. The girl from Rivero's. The one who spilled on Hale? Yeah, heard he's keeping an eye on her. Lena's blood ran cold. Keeping an eye on her, that wasn't protection. That was attention. And attention from a man like Dominic Hale came with consequences, good or bad. She didn't know which yet, but she was starting to understand something important. The spill hadn't been the shocking part. The shocking part was that Dominic Hale had noticed who she was. And once a man like that noticed you, your life never went back to normal. Lena stopped taking the late bus home. She didn't tell anyone she had changed her routine. She just did it quietly, leaving 10 minutes earlier, walking 2 extra blocks, cutting through streets with better lighting. It wasn't paranoia, it was instinct. Attention had weight, and Dominic Hale's attention felt heavy. The whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they had grown, not loud enough to confront, but loud enough to warn. He was watching her, or at least that was what people believed. Lena tried to convince herself it didn't matter. She went to work. She took care of her mother. She slept when she could. Life didn't stop just because something unsettling hovered at the edges. But one night, everything changed. It was near closing when the restaurant doors opened again. Not customers, 2 men walked in wearing cheap suits and confident smiles. The kind of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. They didn't sit. They didn't order. They scanned the room until their gaze landed on Lena. Her stomach dropped. One of them gestured with his chin. You, come here. The manager froze. Gentlemen, if you'd like a table. This won't take long, the man said, still smiling. Lena's hands clenched around the tray. I'm working, she said carefully. The man stepped closer. So is everyone. Before she could respond, another presence entered the room, quiet but immediate. Dominic Hale, he hadn't been seated, he hadn't even been noticed. But the moment he spoke, the temperature dropped. Is there a problem? Dominic asked. The 2 men turned slowly. Recognition hit them like a wall. No problem, the first man said quickly. Just asking the girl a question. Dominic's gaze flicked to Lena. You all right? He asked. She nodded, though her pulse was racing. Dominic turned back to the men. Then you're done here. The smile vanished from the man's face. This doesn't concern you. Dominic took one step forward. That's where you're wrong, he said quietly. Silence spread outward, thick and suffocating. The men backed away slowly, carefully, never breaking eye contact. When the door closed behind them, the restaurant exhaled. Lena realized she was shaking. Dominic turned to her. Go home, he said. Now, what about my shift? Go, he repeated. She didn't argue. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. Her mother noticed immediately. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said softly. Lena hesitated, then sat beside her. There are people asking about me, she admitted. Bad people. Her mother's eyes filled with worry. Because of that man? Lena nodded. Her mother sighed. Lena, sometimes help from powerful people isn't free. I didn't ask for it, Lena said. I know, her mother replied. But that doesn't mean you won't pay for it. The words sat heavy between them. 2 days later, Dominic called the restaurant. He didn't ask for Lena by name, but the manager knew better. She was told to take her break early. Dominic was waiting outside, leaning against a black car. You shouldn't be alone right now, he said as soon as she approached. That doesn't sound reassuring, Lena replied. He studied her carefully. You were approached. Yes. By men who don't belong near you. Why? She asked. Dominic didn't answer immediately. Because of me, he said finally. The truth landed harder than she expected. They think I'm what? She asked. Yours. Dominic's jaw tightened. They think you matter to me. Lena felt a chill. Do I? Dominic met her gaze. You do. She searched his face. Why? He exhaled slowly. Because you remind me of someone, he said. Lena waited. My sister, Dominic continued. She worked jobs like yours. She tried to stay invisible. One night she crossed the wrong people. What happened? Lena asked quietly. She didn't get someone like me to step in, Dominic replied. Lena's chest tightened. So this is guilt, she said. No, Dominic corrected. This is responsibility, he straightened. The men who approached you are trying to leverage fear, not just yours, mine. And what happens now? Lena asked. Dominic's voice was steady. Now I make it clear you're not to be touched. That sounds dangerous, she said. It is, he replied, which is why you need to decide something. He handed her a card. My number, he said. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me. Lena stared at it. And if I don't want this? Dominic didn't hesitate. Then I'll step back. She looked up sharply. Really? Yes, he said. But understand this, stepping back doesn't make the world safer, it just makes it quieter. Lena felt the weight of that choice pressing down on her. She thought of her mother, the men in cheap suits. The way the room had frozen when Dominic spoke, she slipped the card into her pocket. I don't want protection, she said carefully. I want safety. Dominic nodded. Then let me do my job. That night the truth settled in fully. The spill had been an accident. What followed was not. Lena wasn't special because she dropped a plate. She was special because she represented something Dominic Hale had failed to protect once before. And now, whether she liked it or not, she stood at the center of a line he was willing to redraw. A line that once crossed would change far more than just her life. The first sign that things were spiraling wasn't violence, it was distance. Dominic Hale stopped coming to the restaurant. For 2 weeks straight, his table stayed empty. No quiet nods, no guarded glances. No sense of gravity pulling the room inward. The staff noticed immediately, so did the regulars, so did Lena. At first, she felt relief. Then the relief curdled into something colder. Because when powerful men disappeared, it usually meant they were busy somewhere else. And busy men made messes. Lena's unease sharpened the night she found her locker forced open. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just disturbed enough to send a message. We know where you are. She closed it slowly, heart hammering, and finished her shift on autopilot. Outside, the street felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. She didn't wait for the bus. She called Dominic. He answered on the first ring. Where are you? He asked. Outside work, Lena whispered. Something's not right. Don't move, Dominic said. I'm on my way. 10 minutes later, a black car slid to the curb. Dominic stepped out, eyes scanning the street with clinical precision. He looked different, harder. "Get in," he said. She did. They drove in silence for a block before Lena spoke. "You said you'd step back." "I did," Dominic replied. They stepped forward. He glanced at her. "You weren't supposed to be touched." Her throat tightened. "Then why was my locker opened?" Dominic's jaw set. "Because someone wants to see how far they can push me." The pressure came fast after that, a warning call to the restaurant owner. A citation for Lena's building sudden aggressive. A rumor spread that she was involved. Lena watched her life narrow, friends stopped calling, coworkers avoided her eyes. The manager pulled her aside one afternoon, voice shaking. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't keep you on the schedule, not right now." Lena felt the floor tilt. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said miserably, "but they're watching." She walked home in a fog. Her mother took one look at her face and knew. "They're pushing you out," her mother said quietly. "Yes," Lena whispered. Her mother reached for her hand. "Then we leave." Lena shook her head. "It won't matter, they'll just follow." Her mother's eyes hardened. "Then we stop running." That night Dominic came to the apartment, not with guards, not with threats, just with truth. "They want me to choose," he said after Lena closed the door. "Either I pull my protection or I make an example." Lena stared at him. "An example of who?" "Of me," Dominic replied. "Or of you." Her chest tightened. "I never asked for this." "I know," he said softly. "That's why this matters." He paced once, then stopped. "There's another option." She waited. "I can move you both somewhere else," he said. "Quiet, temporary." "And then what?" Lena asked. "You keep fighting them forever?" Dominic met her gaze. "No." The weight in his voice made her heart stutter. "What aren't you saying?" "I've been holding the line with fear," he said. "They're testing it. If I respond the old way, this ends quickly. Brutally. And if you do, then they'll keep pushing," Dominic replied. "Until someone breaks." Lena looked at her mother, who stood silently in the doorway, listening. "You're talking about war," Lena said. Dominic nodded. "I'm talking about consequences." Lena felt something settle in her chest, something heavy but steady. "Then stop doing it for me," she said. Dominic frowned. "What?" "Stop making this about protection," Lena continued. "Make it about truth." He studied her carefully. "Expose them," she said. "The men who are pushing you, the ones who think fear is the only language." "That would burn bridges," Dominic said. "Good," Lena replied. "They deserve to burn." Her mother stepped forward. "We're not asking you to save us," she said. "We're asking you to stop letting monsters hide." The room went quiet. Dominic looked between them, two women with nothing but resolve, and felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Respect. The next move wasn't loud. It was surgical. Dominic began pulling threads. Money trails, phone records, silent partners. He leaked just enough to the right people, journalists who knew how to ask questions without asking too many. The city buzzed. An investigation opened. Names surfaced. Men panicked. The pressure shifted. And then came the retaliation. One night, as Lena and her mother packed essentials, the power cut out. The apartment fell into darkness. A knock followed, slow, deliberate. Lena's breath caught. Dominic was already there, gun in hand, eyes cold. He moved to the door silently and looked through the peephole. 3 men. "Stay back," he whispered. The door burst inward. The moment exploded into chaos, shouts, glass breaking, movement too fast to follow, but it ended quickly. Dominic stood over the last man, gun raised. The man spat blood. "You chose a waitress over an empire." Dominic's voice was calm. "No. I chose a line." The gun lowered, not to kill. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Dominic stepped back. "Run," he told the man, "and remember who spared you." The man crawled away. By morning, the city knew not everything, but enough to break the push. Enough to expose the rot, enough to make people reconsider who held power and how. Lena watched the sunrise from her window, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Her mother stood beside her, holding her hand. "Is it over?" she asked. Lena looked at the quiet street. "No," she said honestly. But it's different now. Behind them, Dominic sat in a chair, blood drying on his knuckles, staring at the floor. He had crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross. And for the first time, he didn't regret it, because consequences weren't just punishment. Sometimes they were the price of finally doing the right thing. The city didn't wake up the next morning screaming, it woke up cautious. News spread the way it always did, not through headlines first, but through pauses in conversation, sudden silences when names were mentioned, and the quiet disappearance of men who had once walked loudly through the world. Investigations were announced. Properties were searched. Accounts were frozen. No one said Dominic Hale's name out loud. They didn't need to. Lena watched it unfold from the small kitchen table in her apartment, coffee going cold in her hands as the morning news played softly in the background. Her mother sat across from her, wrapped in a sweater, eyes tired but clearer than they'd been in months. "They're really doing it," her mother said quietly. "They're not pretending this time." Lena nodded. "They can't, not anymore." The truth was out, not all of it, but enough. Enough to crack foundations. Enough to force accountability in places that had relied on fear and silence for too long. And enough to make Lena's name disappear from the rumors. She wasn't the girl connected to Dominic Hale anymore. She was just a waitress again, and that felt like freedom. Dominic stood in a different place now. Not physically, his office still overlooked the city, but mentally something had shifted. The phone rang constantly, but he answered fewer calls. Meetings were shorter, decisions slower, more deliberate, Marco noticed. "You could have ended this cleaner," Marco said one afternoon. Quieter. Dominic leaned back in his chair. "Cleaner for who?" Marco didn't answer. Dominic continued, "I spent years believing fear was the only thing that held chaos back. Turns out fear just feeds it." Marco studied him carefully. "You're changing." "Yes," Dominic said simply, "that makes you vulnerable." Dominic smiled faintly. "So be it." Lena returned to Rivero's 2 weeks later, not because she needed the job desperately anymore, but because she wanted her life back on her own terms. The manager greeted her with visible relief. "You're clear," he said awkwardly. "Everything's fine now." "I know," Lena replied. The restaurant felt the same and completely different. She carried trays again, took orders, apologized for small mistakes, laughed with coworkers. No whispers followed her. No eyes lingered too long. And for the first time since the accident, she didn't feel like she was walking on a fault line. Near the end of her shift, she noticed a familiar figure near the door. Dominic Hale stood just inside the entrance. Not seated, not commanding attention. Waiting. Lena hesitated, then approached. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Dominic nodded. "I won't stay long." She crossed her arms. "Then say what you came to say." He looked at her, truly looked at her, not as a symbol or a responsibility, but as a person who had changed him. "I'm stepping back," he said. "From everything." Lena searched his face. "That's not something men like you usually say." "I'm not a man like that anymore," Dominic replied. She exhaled slowly. "And what about the people who depended on you?" "They'll adjust," he said. "They always do." A pause stretched between them. "You didn't owe me anything," Lena said. "You know that, right?" Dominic nodded. "I know. Then why risk so much?" Dominic's gaze softened. "Because you reminded me what power is supposed to protect." Lena felt something tighten in her throat. "Take care of yourself," Dominic said. "You too," she replied. He turned to leave. "Dominic," she called. He stopped. "You didn't save me," she said firmly. "You just stopped getting in the way." A small smile touched his lips. "Fair enough," he said and walked out. Months passed. Life settled into something quieter. Lena's mother's health stabilized. Bills were manageable. Lena enrolled in night classes she'd put off for years. Some nights were still hard. Fear didn't vanish overnight, but it no longer ruled her. One evening, Lena walked home after a late shift, city lights glowing softly around her. She passed the spot where the bus stop once felt like a threat. Now it was just a place. She paused, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city haze. Power, she realized, wasn't about who people feared. It was about who felt safe enough to speak when things went wrong. She thought of the night the plate fell, the silence, the eyes watching, and the moment one man chose not to crush someone smaller. The world hadn't changed completely because of it, but her world had, and sometimes that was enough. Lena kept walking, footsteps steady, future open. Behind her, the city continued its endless motion, imperfect, dangerous, alive. But for the first time, she moved through it without fear. And that was the most shocking thing of all.